so surprised any of you are here because they're also announcing some of the things that they've done over the last year, and I thought everyone was going to be over there. So thank you so much for being here. This is adapted from a half-day workshop that we do as part of the Online Education Initiative. So what I have done is kind of just created an overview of that half-day workshop. And then I've also created a course that goes along with it, and it's Creative Commons licensed. So what you can do is enroll in that course. It needs a little fleshing out in some areas because I decided to do this at the very last minute. So you'll see content being added, and then I also want to add a few places for you to put some ideas and suggestions for each other as well. It would be really nice to have a tool where we've populated it with some of the great ideas from across the United States and beyond our shores, since the person before me was from the UK. And so we'll give you the enroll code at the end of this session, and that will allow you to have all of that material. And in that enroll, when you get into the course, there will also be a download package. So if you want to take the course cartridge and use it in your institution, please feel free to do so. I am funded by a grant. My project is funded by a grant from the California State Chancellor's Office. And everything that we do is Creative Commons licensed, open for use by other faculty. We really are designed to support community colleges across the state of California. But we have found that the work that we do is an amazing resource for people all over the place. We have courses that we offer, and people routinely come and take our courses from all over the world. So we're happy to share with you, and we love your feedback too. So if you have some, please let us know. So this is the 10-10-10 challenge. And what it's designed to do is help faculty see their course from a student's perspective. And what we're really interested in, well, let me just push the next button and then you can see. We're interested in student success. We have several initiatives in California that are focused on gathering data about why students repeat courses, why students drop out of college, especially at the community college level. We really want to understand how we can better serve our community. So what we're looking at is students have a range of skills and experiences that they're bringing with them, and we want to understand that as course designers. And we are all faculty course designers. Most of our faculty design their own courses in Canvas. So really empowering faculty to have control over meeting their students. We're looking at the teaching style and how that affects the student experience. So it's not just about course design, it's also about those teaching behaviors and things that people do, especially in the first couple weeks of the class, that help their students feel part of a learning community and help them understand how the instructor is going to connect with them and help them in their learning process. And finally, we're looking at how course design affects the student experience. So we're all using Canvas. In the state of California, our community colleges all share 114 campuses on Canvas. Well, not quite 114. There's a couple that are kind of hanging on to other course management systems. I'm not sure what's wrong there. But anyway, we're moving really close to having this common course management system. And so the idea is that students will have an experience that allows them to see the technology as kind of invisible. But we actually know that even though we have that common course management system, everyone uses Canvas a little bit differently. So we want to understand that better. This particular workshop that we do asks instructors to really look at the cognitive load their technology or their course design is placing on students. So when we talk about cognitive load, we're talking about those first few minutes when students look at a new page in your course. Can they understand where they are? Can they get their bearings? Do they know what they're going to do next? And so we really want them, the instructors, to understand how they're designing and how that affects the cognitive load on the students. So there's this person who studied cognitive load, and he argued that the instructional design can be used to reduce cognitive load in learners. So if we're intentional about this, we can actually design courses that help the technology become more invisible, which is especially important for students who may be less digitally literate. Right? So if we have students, in California we have a lot of them, that don't have a computer at home, that access the course on their mobile device, that have never had the possibility at their house of actually surfing the internet before they go to bed like my kids do, then how can we help them make the technology as invisible as possible and give them more opportunities for success? Another thing that we've done in the state of California is develop a rubric for faculty to use to assess their courses. So the rubric looks at course navigation and how our course navigation affects the student experience, page design and how the page design affects students or helps students do tasks that they're supposed to do, whether or not we're engaging in student-centered teaching, so whether or not we've designed our courses in ways that allow students to interact and get the support that they need, the information that they need, and take multiple pathways through the course. Whether or not we have meaningful instructions. So do we put a video on and just expect them to know that they should be looking for keywords or vocabulary? Are we explaining to them what they're supposed to do with the resources we've collected for them? Are our instructions for actually navigating through the course clear enough that allows a student who's never taken an online course to navigate successfully? And finally, are we using the CMS tools in ways that are effective? Maybe not the ways that Canvas designed them, but ways that are effective for our students. There's many more portions of the OEI rubric. There's 4 sections and a 5th section on accessibility. And those sections have somewhere between 9 and 13 individual criterion as part of those, but these are the ones that we've used for this particular workshop. So what do we do in the first 10 minutes? What do we ask faculty to do in the first 10 minutes? If we think about student cognitive load, and we think about the ways that they access Canvas, we really want to pay attention to the home page. So we're asking our faculty to go in to their courses in student view and look at that home page and really assess it from a stranger's perspective. So sometimes when we're designing, we know exactly what we want the student to do, and we don't realize that we really haven't given them the instructions that they need. Okay, so in that first 10 minutes that your student's in the course, and actually we're being really generous here because studies have shown that the cognitive load actually raises for someone who doesn't understand your course design in about 3 to 10 seconds. Okay, so we could have made this the 10-second challenge, okay? And so we ask the faculty to look at their homepage and see if they can answer these questions for their student. Where am I? What am I supposed to do? And who can help me? And we ask them those questions over and over and over again. Okay? We often design for students that we think are like us, the successful students, and forget to design for the students who have a little more difficulty navigating, right? We might even say, we have a lot of faculty as our students. And sometimes we say, oh, what is their problem? Did they not even read it? But those faculty that are struggling to go through our professional development courses are really the ones we should be designing to. Those students who are having trouble navigating our courses are the ones we should be designing to, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the Canvas options for home pages. So it's all about choices. This is the menu that you get when you want to choose a Canvas homepage. And your choices are course activity stream, the page's front page, course modules, the assignment list, and the syllabus. So one of the things that we want faculty to think through are the pros and cons for each one. Now, some people at this point in the workshop raise their hand and say, well, you're going to force us to all do the same thing? Absolutely not. We're actually encouraging you to do a wide variety of things and come up with a variety of ideas that match your students, your course material, and your teaching strategies. But you have to do that by knowing what the pros and the cons for each one of these choices are. So we ask them to kind of go through and think through these different options. So for instance, the activity stream. How many of you teach hybrid courses? Okay, use Canvas to augment a face-to-face course? Okay, and teach fully online. All right, so each one of those students has completely different needs, and each one of those instructors will use Canvas in different ways. So the activity stream might be really great for a face-to-face class where you're wanting your students to go in and look at specific things that are happening. Same with the assignments list. But if you have a fully online course and the activity stream is your home page, for students who are struggling, it's going to be really difficult for them because if you have a terrific student who's on the ball, those students that log in that first week, your course opens on Monday morning at 8 a.m. and at 8:01, that student's in, right? When they log in and look at the course stream, it's a little tiny list. But the student who isn't logged in by Friday the one that you've sent 2 messages to saying, hey, our online course has started, and they sent you back a message saying, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to do anything this week. They're struggling. They need help. And when they log into the activity stream, they're going to see a lot of stuff. It's going to be overwhelming to them to try to figure out what they want to do, right? So you have to understand what your course is, how it's operating, how you operate as an instructor, and what your students might need. So our instructors like to use Module Page instead, right? This is actually the new default with Canvas. There's some strengths to that. The modules is like a table of contents. So your students can see what they're supposed to be doing in the course. They can see the length of the module. If you're using requirements, they can even see what they've done and what they haven't done. The problem is that you need to name everything in your course really deliberately, because that table of contents is going to help them locate where they are. So if you use terms that are ambiguous, or if you've used terms that are metaphorical, like I apparently have a tendency to do, then your students may not be able to locate themselves because your table of contents just isn't meaningful. In addition, you can't put instructions there. So the modules page doesn't tell them, you might have a start here page, and hopefully they click on that, but it doesn't give them the information that they need maybe to start the course off and start it successfully, okay? So you just have to understand what the benefits are of using that and what the risks are of using it. In that first 10 minutes, we walk them through using the assignments page, right? So if you have a face-to-face course, you might want to land on the assignments page because that's what your students are going there for, right? They want to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing as their homework. But in a fully online course, this list may not look anything like you think it looks. Your students, first of all, have control of whether they want to look at it by due date or by assignment type. So you aren't controlling what they're seeing. They're controlling what they're seeing. Also, they may skip content because they're looking just at the assignment. And for students who are struggling a little bit, the assignment list might be overwhelming. They'll look at that and say, I can't do it, I'm just going to drop this course, okay? Understanding the pros and cons of it. The syllabus page, usually when we do this, we have websites open, by the way, with different courses, and we show lots of examples of what this might look like. And one of the things that we found is that people use the syllabus page and they think, okay, I should put my syllabus here. And so how many of you have a syllabus that's 3 pages? 5 pages? 10 pages? Okay. 15 pages? Okay. We've seen where people have copied and pasted their whole 10-page syllabus here on the syllabus page, right? So it's a good place for that information because the course navigation menu says syllabus, but it's not a very good way for your students to be able to find the information quickly. And what is really important about the syllabus page is that amazing course summary. So in week 3, students probably could care less about your course policies. They probably cared not very much about the course policies on day 1, right? But they really want that calendar. And if you're making them scroll through that calendar every single time, the syllabus every single time, they're doing a lot of scrolling to get to the information they really need. So some people have put PDF of their syllabus instead. So in the editable section, they put a little bit of language about the syllabus, maybe their contact information, and then they actually just link the syllabus, which allows them to open it in a box. And that's a really great idea. Or wait, now we have doc viewer. Okay. But the problem with that is that your syllabus then is kind of stale, right? I don't think that your students, unless you have an amazing syllabus, log into your course and like, oh, I'm at the syllabus page again. This is so exciting, right? So it doesn't really allow them to engage in your course in ways that you would like them to engage in your course. So that's the second example there. We actually have a mocked up syllabus with just the headings for all of the different requirements that we have in our CC system for what should be in a syllabus, and just with the titles and not even any paragraphs, just one sentence for each one. It's 6 screens, right? So you can imagine if you fill it with the data that should be there, your students are really going to be scrolling. Okay. So finally, we have content page. And a content page allows you to dynamically create any information. And so it has a little bit more flexibility than some of the other options and allows you to really direct your students to what it is that you want them to do. One of the problems is that we see a lot of home pages, the very first page that the student lands on, full of text. Okay? So we caution people to not be text heavy. As a matter of fact, we try to get them to be really text light. Maybe just have the name of the course and the instructor's contact information and a Start Here button so that it's really clear exactly what you want them to do in the first 10 minutes they're in their course, right? There's no room for students misunderstanding what the options are when they can see that Start Here. So here's an example from an instructor who's tried to do that, right? And so she has a nice image to help locate the students, but then she's got a ton of text with some, it's hard for you to read, but when you get into the course, you'll be able to see it much more clearly. Instructions on what she wants them to do, and those instructions are kind of buried in that paragraph, right? So it takes a little bit more time for the student to be able to really understand what she wants them to do. And what she does in this paragraph is directs them to the syllabus. Okay, so I did this the first time I taught in Canvas as well. I thought it was such a smart thing. Start here on the home page, go to the syllabus. What happens when they get to the syllabus? Is there a next button to take them into the module? No. This is what we call designing into a dead end, right? And so the students who have already taken a course, they kind of know, oh, I'll just go into the modules and try to find my way around, right? But really, if we're designing for the students who most need our support, most need our help, we don't want them trying to find their way around. The more they have to try to figure out what you want, the more likely they are to get frustrated. The more frustrated they are, the higher their anxiety will become, the more they'll go into what I call lizard brain, right? Where you no longer see the screen at all, you see only the things that are going to bring you to the wrong place, right? So we really want to provide enough directions to them to let them start out and start well. So in that first 10 minutes, some of the things that we're asking them to do is, are you orienting your students? Okay? Are you letting them know they're in the right course? Are you letting them know who you are and how to contact you, which is really important in an online course? Are you providing clear directions for what they're supposed to do first, even if it's Start Here? They at least know very clearly what they're supposed to do. And is it student-centered, not the information that you need them to have, but rather the information that they need in order to start successfully, okay? So after they've gotten through that first few minutes, then you can go on to something else. I want to show you one other thing. Since we kind of endorse the content page, we guide our faculty gently toward the content page. I tell them that I change, in my 18-week course, I change my content page every Monday morning. And they're like, you change it every Monday morning? Yeah, I build it ahead of time. But then whenever my students are talking about in the discussion, I add a little line about that to kind of like let them know I'm listening and let them know what I'm excited about and what they should be paying attention to with each other. And it keeps that homepage really dynamic. And some of my students are probably skipping the homepage. They're using other ways to get into the course. But in my final course reviews, I almost always have 4 or 5 students that say their favorite part of the course was the homepage every week. So that's kind of nice to know that a fraction of your students are logging in just to see what your homepage is for the week. Yeah? So the question was, do I keep my revisions each week? I actually make 16 different homepages. And then I flip my front page every week, and it changes the homepage. Yeah, yeah. So they're published, but they're just in pages and not in a module. Yeah, good question. Hi, yeah. So the question is, do I manually do that each week, or what are the settings that would do it automatically? There's not a way to do it automatically right now. And so you can have your modules release automatically, but not your homepage release automatically. And I just have a routine that I do. I'm sure you all have a routine for Monday morning as well, right? And one of mine is toggling my homepage, right? So, yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's the homepage, so it doesn't have to link to it, right? It's just there. Yeah, when they log in, it's there. Yeah, but I do weekly announcements, but for different things. Yeah. So you can kind of, if you change your homepage every week, it's like a little mini announcement, right? It's one more way to make sure that students are getting announcements. So sometimes they cross-reference each other. Yeah, so it's one more way that I can do an announcement. I'll take one more question, but then I want to get through the 10 hours and then 10 days. Okay.
I just wanted to ask if students ever asked for previous homepages that you had.
That's a really good question. No. I'm sorry, I'm repeating. The question was, do students ever ask for a previous homepage? No, I've never had them ask for a previous homepage. I have had them ask for links to videos that I've had on the homepage, but when I have a video on my homepage, I always have it someplace else in the course. So it's really easy for me to point out where it is. Yeah, good question. Okay, so what I wanted to point out is my first time I ever used a content page. And so what I did was used the first page of the first module. And there's lots I could critique about this. I really was concerned that they would miss the next button. We were all new to Canvas. We were coming from Etudes. And so I was so afraid they would miss the next button. And so I made this beautiful little banner that I put at the bottom saying, here is the next button. And it turns out when it's the homepage, there's no next button. So, yeah. So the very first thing that happened on Monday morning was like, I log in, and I can see that students are starting to log into the class and everything else. And then at noon, I jumped back into the course. I don't want to hatch the course, I don't want to be overprotective. And there's like 15 messages from students. Like, I can't find the next button. And then you're like, oh my gosh, are these people dumber than dirt? Why can't they find that? I put a great big huge banner to where it goes to the next button. And then I log in and I look from student view and I'm like, damn, there's no next button. So embarrassing, right? But students love when you make a mistake, and so you get to post and say, oh, I've made my first mistake. The next person that catches me in one gets 5 points extra credit or something like that. So yeah, they kind of liked that. So the next time I did it, I had a course that started the next week, actually. And so I put a big Start Here button, and I used the first page of the module again, and I connected it to the first page of the module. So then they pushed Start Here, and it took them to the same page. Before they could get to the next button, they hit the Start Here again. And they just kept going back and forth between my home page and the first page of my module, home page, first page. And the student said, I think your Start Here button is broken. And I said, no, I think my instructional design is broken, but it's okay. So there's 2 mistakes of mine that you can learn from. Don't do it. Okay, so the next 10 hours, it's all about schema. So if we're talking about cognitive load, one way that we can help students lower their cognitive load is helping them develop a schema for our course. So we have an orientation module. How many of you use an orientation or a getting started module? Yay, I love you. Okay, really good idea, just telling you. And so one of the things that we do is introduce our students to our policies, our individual course policies, our campus policies, but we also try to build in a lot of access to the tools we're going to be using in our course. And so we ask our faculty, what are the tools that you think you're going to be using a lot in your course, and how can you creatively use those same tools in that first week of the course so that they can practice making a discussion post. And if they can't figure out how to do it, you can give them some triage right there before they have a really high risk assessment that they need to do, right? If you're going to have your students uploading documents, like Word documents, have them upload something so they can see how they can do it and ask you questions about Canvas before they start. If you're going to have your students download forms, fill them out, and load them back up again, show them how to do that in that first week so that they know how to do it. Sure.
I'm sure that 100 people or more have already created something like that. Is there a place we can go where we can look at one that's already created and get better ideas how to do that?
So she wants to know, she's sure that other people have done it. She wants to use crowdsourcing to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. And when you get into this course, you'll see a sample orientation module that has a lot of the things that I use in my course. And what I would love is for you to upload orientation modules that you use as well, because I teach communication. There's a lot of things that we need to do in a communication course that you might not need to do in one of your courses. So it'd be really cool to have that stuff in Commons actually, where we can actually grab it and use it in our courses so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Okay, so that first week is about schema. And so I want to go back to one other thing, which is looking at the Canvas syllabus and how we can use the Canvas syllabus. So it's a tool. It's not really the syllabus, right? So we either have to upload our syllabus to it or something like that. And so one of the questions we have to ask is, what is a syllabus? What is a syllabus designed to do? And then what's an online syllabus? And is it different than our face-to-face syllabus? What do we need to include in our online syllabus to reinforce some of the behaviors and policies that are important to the success of online students? And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is a Canvas syllabus then, right? So students are going to click on that Canvas syllabus link expecting something, okay? Now, I try to run my class with no documents. I do have a downloadable syllabus for my students that want to download it, but if you look at my files, I probably have maybe 4 or 5 files in my class. Everything else is digital. And so what I have done in my course, I teach a critical thinking course based on Disney. If you ever want to get more students into your class, say that Disney is your topic, okay? There's no drops. They really, really think that there's a field trip at the end where they get to go to Disneyland or Disney World, and so they stay in for the long haul. So what I have done is created a module, which is the one that is in the course you can enroll in, and then I've taken and used the link list to just draw in the parts of the syllabus that I think students are most likely to click on the syllabus link for. And so there's a hot link then right there to that first module. It opens up the module, and there is the policy that they're looking for, the contact information that they're looking for, something like that. So that's what I have done with that syllabus page, so that I really let them get to that course summary. They have easy access to it. And then the other thing that we've encouraged people to do is make a link to their downloadable syllabus and put their contact information there. Because if students are clicking on your syllabus in week number 5, chances are they're looking for a way to contact you. And so reiterating that contact information. And if you have other reasons that you think that students are accessing the syllabus, we'd love to hear those too, right? So please find ways to use this open course to help us all better understand how our students are using the syllabus tool. And another thing that we want them to do in the first 10 hours of the course is help develop that learning community. And so we're talking about tutorials to help students actually be successful. We are talking about policies that help them be successful in the course, and meeting their peers, which is, again, all about those tools, because they need communication tools in order to be able to do these things. So helping them learn how to navigate Canvas, find the information that they need, but also helping them figure out how to contact one another, how to contact you, and how to use the communication that's built into your course so that online students don't feel isolated. I can't see what it says. What does it say, Thomas? 10 minutes. Thank you. I was a little nervous there. Hey, 10 minutes. Perfect. Yeah. Good job. Okay. So I want to tell you something that I learned from using this introductory module, which is that I had built well, first of all, I had to really think about what I was titling my pages, because it turned out that I had a lot of metaphoric language, and students couldn't find the policy they were looking for because I was calling it things like got milk, got help, right? And so I had to be a lot more explicit about the page titles that I was actually using. And so I built this really long module with all these different policies broken out so that students could use the module view or use the syllabus to find exactly the information that they were looking for. And I teach communication, so communication is a huge part of it. And at the end of that module, I had them engage in a meet and greet discussion forum. Well, the first time I taught the course, everybody was late on their meet and greet discussion. I'm like, why are you all late on this, right? So I kind of just asking a few students, sending them an email saying, hey, you were a little late on this. Can you tell me why? And they're like, well, it took so long to go through the module that I didn't get to it until Thursday, and then I realized it was due on Wednesday. And so I thought, well, why did I design it that way? So instead, at the beginning of the module, I introduce them to the course, I introduce them to me, and then I say, introduce yourself, the very, very beginning of the course. So I moved that introductory meet and greet discussion form way up at the beginning of the module. I mean, they don't need to know any of my course policies to be able to introduce themselves, right? And then at the end of the module, I actually have them engage in developing our course communication policies, because I thought that was a good idea to do in a communication course, is engage them in building those policies. So you can kind of think of that first 10 days as being all about communication. How you're communicating the course policies to them, how you're communicating how to use the course to them, and how you're engaging them in communication with one another. Finally, let's get to the first 10 days of the course. So if you think of the first 10 hours as the first week, the first 10 days are the first 2 weeks of the course. And we're moving here from an orientation unit to the actual content unit of the course, and we have to help students successfully navigate that. And I find at the beginning of a course, you get students who are completely disengaged. They don't realize that they should be logging in and checking for information. And then you get students who are like posting 15 times to the meet and greet discussion forum, and then you get the students in between, right? But in week 2, some of the students who are going to struggle in the course, who may not have the time management skills, start to get busy with their other classes. They're fully engaged in maybe their face-to-face courses, and so they might not have as much interaction in the course. And so the 10 days is all about helping students see how they're going to move into content rather than orientation, but at the same time, aggressively watching your course analytics so that you can see which students are already having 5-day gaps between their logins, which students are spending only a minute or 2 on pages, or going through an entire module in 15 minutes. So just clicking through the module. So it's really about getting to know your resources, getting to know your people page. So even people who are new to Canvas, instructors who are new to Canvas, we teach them the power of the people page and paying attention to who's logging in, when they're logging in, how much time they're spending in Canvas. So they don't have to be overwhelmed by the analytics at first, but they're empowering themselves to understand how their students are using their course or not using the course, and are able to reach out to the student then to let them know, hey, look, I wanted to let you know that you should really be logging in whatever your policy is, every other day, every day during the week, whatever you've decided is what you want your students to do. But monitoring it so that you can reach out super, super early to those students and make sure that you're using all of the power that you have. So one of the pieces that I really like is now that you can look at the individual student, especially when you're in SpeedGrader, you can click on their name and get a lot of information about them. So we've been teaching people to pay attention to how many page views the people have, and especially like in relation to the rest of the students in your course, because that can really help them kind of figure out how their average student is participating in the course. Students might need a little bit of nudge of some kind, okay? So that's our 10-10 challenge. I'd like to give a few minutes to those of you that have questions. So if you have a question, hi. Yes. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the question is there anything that I can do if if I see a student isn't engaging in the course from analytics to send them a message? And so from analytics itself, you could just access the inbox, right, from the student's profile. But even more powerful than that is engaging them in activities through the first week and actually the first 2 weeks. So even though they're into the content module, have a lot of things, little things that are due, right? Because if they miss a couple of those little things, then just from the gradebook, you can send them a message. And if you've got the new app for your mobile device, it's amazingly slick how you can send them a message. You can aggregate all the students who haven't turned in an assignment and send them all a message from SpeedGrader. So the question is there some automated message that you can send to people if they haven't logged in a certain amount of days? And you're saying there is?
Yeah, well, no, in D12, it's in
Okay. So I'm not aware of something like that, but I also have to tell you, I have very little melt in my classes. I have my students, I usually have classes that are in between 25 and 30 students. Those are my writing classes have 25 students, my communications classes have 30. And I usually finish with about 22 writing students and about 26 or 27 communication students.
What I loved about that feature was that it wasn't just about those first 10 days. It was also like if something happened
Yeah.
and they didn't show up for 2 days, they would also get that email.
Yeah, it's nice to have it automated, but I also think it's nice to have a personal touch. Yeah.
Just asking if campus has it.
Not that I know of. It's a really great question. Boy, add it to the community. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so we want to let you have access to this course then. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure I published it yet. So, but it will let you enroll even if it's not published, and we'll tell you that you have to wait for it. So here's the enroll code, and we'll be adding to the course as we move along. We want to give you as much information as possible. We'll give you this PowerPoint presentation. And again, it's Creative Commons licensed. You can use it in whatever way that you see fit. Great. Well, thank you so much, and have a great time here at InstructureCon.